Hey, can anybody hear me? I'm trying to make my headset connected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello. May the force be with you.
And also with you.
Welcome back, guys. It's good to see y'all. I hope that you had a good spring break. Sorry that I'm a little bit late, kind of a crazy day. Furthermore, I'm really hoping that my MacBook does not die. I'm in my office on campus and I forgot to bring a power cord. Anyway, I'm going to share my screen with y'all. I'm excited about today's class. We're going to transition to Descartes today, but first, before that, a couple of housekeeping items, okay? Can y'all see my desktop?
Yes.
All right, so let's see. I uploaded, I do this, I've done this many times in this class, but I uploaded a revised version of the lecture notebook. So the lecture notebook that is currently on Canvas is the most recent and the most up-to-date. I'm going to pull that up right here, if I can find it. There we go. Okay, can you guys see this?
Yes.
Great. And
Yes,
that,
sir.
I spoke too soon because I also want to pull up the reading schedule real quick. Yes. But first, let's see. Oh, yeah. Housekeeping. I have some housekeeping items and maybe just one. And that is that I have been thinking about meeting in person, as I talked about a couple of weeks ago. And honestly, I think that I'm leaning toward doing that. I plan to make a final announcement about this on Wednesday, but I did speak to my boss, Greg Bach, about this, and he thought it was a good idea. And so, yeah, I'm about to go crazy from Zoom, you know what I mean? And part of why I teach is to like have real relationships with real people. Not that I'm a creeper, I'm not. But yeah, I like people, you know what I mean? And I'm not a huge fan of computer screens. So I am leaning toward doing that. Now, here's what I want to say to you. I know that there's at least one person. I know that there's one person in this class who has already told me that they're not going to be able to attend, and for reasons that I'm not going to go into right now. If there's anyone else who's in that boat, let me know. We're going to figure out a way to make sure that this one person who can't attend is going to be fine. I've got a couple of different ideas there, but if there's anyone else who is not able to attend for some reason, please send me an email and let me know. Okay, does that make sense? And if there's anyone who wants to chime in about this, I kind of took an informal poll a couple of weeks ago, but if there's someone who did not make their preference known to me, who would like to do that now, please do so. Send me an email, send me a text. But I want you to know that I'm leaning toward that, and I will make an announcement about it on Wednesday, okay? I thought of two other housekeeping things that I wanted to talk about real quick. And the first one is that I have decided to have an end of the semester party at my house. This is something that I've done in previous semesters with my students. You don't have to come. It's totally unrelated to your grade, but especially coming out of a pandemic, I think it'd be a great idea. I know that there's a lot of people who are kind of starving for social interaction, and this will be a great opportunity to socialize and hang out and be together, okay? I'm also going to invite my other class, my Intro to Medieval Philosophy class. So more details on that later. Just know that you're invited. It won't affect your grade in any way, whether you come or don't come. And yeah, more details forthcoming, okay? One last thing in terms of housekeeping, and that is that like 2 or 3 classes ago, there was a very bold and courageous and wonderful student. It was a female student who courageously admitted that she was totally confused. And do y'all remember how I responded to that? Who can tell me how I responded to that?
You gave the student extra points for their discussion. Great.
Now, here's what I need. I need that student to tell me who she is. Yeah.
It's me. It's Senia Perez.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Hello.
Will you send me an email? Because I'm a man of my word, but I need help keeping my word. Will you just send me an email?
Yes, I will.
That would be awesome. I really appreciate that. Okay. And is it Ksenia?
Yes.
Okay. Spell your first name because I can't find you.
Senia.
Nice. Okay. Very cool. Senia, thank you so much. Send me an email and we will get that taken care of, because I really appreciate people admitting when they're not following. That's a great thing and a wonderful way to learn. Okay. Okay, y'all, that's it for me. That's all my housekeeping stuff. I'm excited today because we're going to delve into Descartes. We're going to transition from the ancient world of Plato and Aristotle. And oh, by the way, don't forget about the Pre-Socratics, Heraclitus and Parmenides. We're going to transition, take a giant leap over 16, actually more like 20 centuries, kind of crazy. And we're going to land in the 17th century and talk about Descartes, okay? But before we do that, does anyone have anything that they would like to say at the moment?
Father Bolter, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
If all goes according to plan and we end up meeting in person next week, will the class be located in the class number that is shown at the My UT Tyler page?
Yes, which is CAS 158, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you confirm that, Daniel? CAS 158.
Yes, I'll confirm it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's right. And remember, I'm a big believer in communication. Like, I tend to over communicate rather than under communicate, which I'm cool with. I will let you know on Wednesday. Okay. And also, y'all, don't forget that I do confess that I did fail to upload one of my classes recently, and I'm so sorry for that. But I do try to upload all of my classes to my YouTube channel, and I've succeeded in all but one of those. And so if you miss class on Wednesday, you can text me, you can email me, you can ask a friend, or you could just watch the YouTube video to figure out if we're going to meet in person. Okay. Y'all, any other thoughts, any other questions, any other comments, jokes, riddles, nightmares?
I confirmed the room number. You were correct. It's CAS 158.
Thank you. Awesome. Yeah. You know, sadly, we are going to have to wear masks and be socially distanced. I think it's probably worth it. And I also think that we're kind of used to wearing masks. I mean, whenever we started doing that, like around a year ago, it was pure hell for me. But I'm kind of used to it now. I mean, I still don't like it, but I'm kind of used to it. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Stay tuned on Wednesday, but I'm leaning toward meeting together in person, okay? Okay, y'all, why don't we look at the lecture notebook. And let's get started. Like I said, today we're going to transition to Descartes, and your reading assignment for this week is Meditations 1. I do think that I'm a little behind. We're a little behind on the reading schedule, but that's okay. What I'm expecting you to have read for this week is meditation 1, okay? Now remember, please remember and do not forget that this is what my book looks like. And in this little book, there's actually 2 works by Descartes. One of them is called what?
Discourse on Method.
That's right. And the other one is called what?
Philosophy.
One more time.
Meditations on First Philosophy.
Boom. So 2 works in this one book. Are we reading both of those works for this class? Yes or no?
No.
No, we're not. Which one are we reading?
Meditations 1.
Philosophy. That's exactly right. Now, who is it that helped me out there? Was that you, Ariana? Thank you. Did I say your name right, by the way?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Yeah, don't read Discourse on Method. We're only going to read Meditations on First Philosophy. By the way, have you ever heard that phrase, first philosophy, before? Can someone say something about that phrase, first philosophy? Where have we seen that phrase before? Who can tell me?
When Aristotle talked about how metaphysics was the first philosophy, not because it was the very first one, but it was just the fundamental philosophy.
That's exactly right. I do happen to have my handy copy of Aristotle's Metaphysics translated into English. The weird thing about this book, among many other things, is that he never actually calls it the Metaphysics. It got that name in a different weird way that we've already talked about a lot, but he did give it a name. He gave it 2 names, in fact. One of them was Theologia, aka theology, because it spells out his notion about God, theos, T-H-E-O-S, who he calls theos, the unmoved mover / prime mover, and thirdly, what? Thought thinking itself. We're going to come back to that, thought thinking itself. But the point is, Aristotle never calls this book the Metaphysics. He calls it theology, and he calls it first philosophy. So, ding, ding, ding. That's why we're reading another book with the phrase first philosophy in the title. This is one of the things that Aristotle and Descartes have in common. They're both very, very interested in this notion of first philosophy. We'll come back to that. But don't read Discourse on Method, at least not for this class, okay? Yeah, so we're gonna talk about Descartes now. We're transitioning. Descartes is our first, and in some ways only, modern philosopher that we're looking at in this class. Why would I say that Nietzsche is not a modern philosopher? Aren't we going to talk about Nietzsche? Yes, we are. But the reason I don't think that he's a modern philosopher is because I think of him as a postmodern philosopher. But we'll come to that later. Okay. Today we're going to transition to Descartes. And I'm expecting you to read Meditations 1 this week. Now, y'all, I want to say something else. There's a 98% chance that next week you're going to have a quiz on Aristotle. I mean on Descartes. And as I've done in the past, my quizzes are freaking easy. Admit it. You're welcome. They're pretty easy. But I don't want to be a complete slacker, and I don't want to completely not challenge you. And so what I try to do in my quizzes is have one question, which is a super easy, low-hanging fruit type question based on the reading. And so what I want to say to you is this: you better read the fucking chapter. But if you don't have time, or you just can't, at the very least, skim. I've gotten on this soapbox before. You've heard me talk about this before, but I'm going to say it again. Skim the text. By the way, let me look at the reading schedule real quick. See how it says introductory material right here on the reading schedule? So what I'm expecting you to read for this week is Meditations 1, but also introductory material. What is that, introductory material? Well, it's the stuff that pops up before the first meditation, okay? Beginning on my page 45. Okay? Now, what I want to point out to you is something very, well, I want to give you some hints, some suggestions on how to skim, especially this work. Some texts are more easily skimmable than others. This one is very skimmable, okay? Why? I'll tell you why. Number one, Descartes puts lots of headings on stuff. Read the headings. That's one thing. Headings and titles. Read the headings and titles, okay? But the second thing I want to say is that Descartes has something super handy. And by the way, we're a little bit behind in our schedule. I mean, if you look at the reading schedule, we were, oh, no, we're not. Dang it, we're not behind. Oops, okay, we're not behind. Nevertheless, I want to emphasize to you that there's something that he gives us called the synopsis of the six meditations. Synopsis of the six meditations. If you fail to read that, you're kind of an idiot, no offense, but you should really read that. He's making it easy for us to skim this text, okay? So if you do nothing else, read that synopsis, and there's a 93% chance, or you could say a 98% chance that you're gonna have a quiz next week on Descartes, okay? Probably on Wednesday, okay? All right, back to the lecture outline. Now, like I said, as we move to Descartes, we're essentially leapfrogging over 2 millennia of history from Aristotle, who I think of, I think of him as like 4th century BC-ish, so like the 300s. I hope that I'm right about that. I know that Socrates died in 399. That's a good date to remember. 399 would be the beginning of the 4th century. Aristotle, I want to say, was more toward the end of the 4th century, maybe the 320s, something like that. We're leapfrogging from that point in history all the way over to the 17th century, the 1600s AD, right? So Descartes is much closer to us than he is to Aristotle, right? So we're kind of like taking a quantum leap into the future from the point of view of Aristotle. Now, let me ask you this. What do you think, if I held a gun to your head and said, what is the big thing, the main thing? Tell me one thing that has happened between Aristotle and Descartes. What would you say?
Religion.
Say it again.
Possibly religion.
Jagger, that's a great suggestion. Can you be more specific?
When there's different ones, and Christianity, yes.
Yeah, I think I would say probably Christianity. I mean, Judaism predates Aristotle in a lot of ways. Buddhism certainly predates Aristotle in a lot of ways. I mean, religion is a super broad term. I would say that let me put it this way, y'all. This is a philosophy class and we live in the West. So this is not a philosophy class that deals with China, okay? This is a class in Western philosophy beginning with the Pre-Socratics. And for that tradition or subject matter, I can promise you that the most important development between Aristotle on the one hand and Descartes on the other is just what it says right here on your outline, the emergence not of religion in general, but of Christianity. Now, does Christianity stand on the shoulders of the Hebrew religion? Yes, it does. But it still can be regarded as its own distinct thing. And it didn't exist in Aristotle's day, but by the time we get to Descartes' day, it certainly has existed for many centuries, okay? Now, let me just tell you sort of what I mean by Christianity or the emergence of Christianity. And actually, let me tell you not what I think. Let me tell you what my 3 stock examples of the Christian religion are. Let me tell you what they would say, what they think. Now, can y'all remind me of who my 3 stock examples representatives of the Christian tradition are? Who can remind me? Anyone remember? Come on, y'all. Okay, here's my 3 stock examples. If you want to know what mainstream Orthodox Christianity thinks, I would point you to 3 thinkers. Number 1, Saint Augustine. Number 2, Thomas Aquinas. Number 3, anyone want to guess? C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis, the guy who wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, blah, blah, blah. He lives more in the modern times. In fact, he died in the 20th century. But those are my 3 stock examples of Christian belief. They're all dead white guys. Well, actually, Augustine wasn't white. You know, he wasn't white. He wasn't white. He was from Africa. So what am I saying? By the way, Jesus wasn't white either. But you've got St. Augustine, you have Thomas Aquinas. He was kind of a white guy. C.S. Lewis is definitely a white guy. They're all dead. Those are my 3 stock examples of the Christian tradition, of what you might think of as mainstream, generic, Orthodox Christian faith, okay? So let me tell you what I mean by the emergence of Christianity, not in my terms, but in their terms. This is what they would say, okay? What they would say is that the important thing to keep in mind is we are talking about, I'm going to put it in theological terms. We're talking about the incarnation of the divine logos. Okay, I'm going to put that in the chat. I'm going to repeat that. We are talking about the incarnation of the divine logos, okay? La Encarnación, if anyone speaks Spanish, the incarnation of the divine logos. Now, we've talked a little bit about that word logos before, right? I think so. I certainly hope so. That word pops up in John's gospel. In the beginning was the
Word.
Word. And that word for word in Greek is the word logos. So what John says is, in the beginning was the logos, and the logos was made flesh. The logos became flesh. Incarnación, if you speak Spanish, you hear the root word carne in there. The word became meat. The logos became meat, flesh, an animal, a human being, a rational animal, a little baby who can be classified as a mammal, right? The word became flesh. Now, y'all, here's the thing. I don't really care if you actually believe. Okay, wait, time out. Let me back up a little bit. What do we mean by divine logos? What the heck does that mean? Well, what that means is God. Okay, now we could, I could give a whole semester philosophy class just on that word logos. We don't have time. So for our purposes, I'm just going to say God. What we mean by the divine logos is God. So what St. John is saying is, in the beginning, sorry. Oh.
Was the word.
Oh yeah, in the beginning was the word, in the beginning was the logos, and he says, and the logos was God. And the word became flesh and dwelt among us. In the beginning was the logos, and the logos was God, and the logos became flesh and dwelt among us. So what is the logos? God. So the claim that I'm pointing out to you that C.S. Lewis, Thomas Aquinas, and St. Augustine would all affirm, and this would be their definition of the emergence of Christianity, like I'm talking about here on your lecture notebook, what they would say that's referring to is the incarnation of the divine logos, the incarnation of God, okay? That's what we mean by the emergence of Christianity. Now, do I insist that all of my students actually believe that God became a little baby, born of a virgin, in ancient Palestine? No, I don't, obviously. Would I like for you to believe that? Yes. Do I really, really hope that you'll think about these things that I'm teaching you? Yes. But this isn't a Sunday school class. This isn't church. This isn't even a religion class. I don't really care for the purposes of this class if you believe that God really became man or not. But here's what you must believe. You must believe that Western civilization has believed that for centuries. All right? You must believe that Christianity is a historical phenomenon, that there emerged you might call it a philosophy, you might call it a theology. There were a bunch of people and societies and cultures and worldviews and civilizations who did believe in the incarnation of the divine Logos. And guess what? That affected all subsequent thought in the West. It affected all subsequent thought in the West. So that if you live after the first century in the West and you're a philosopher, your mind has been impacted by the notion, the concept of the incarnation, of Christianity. Even if you reject it like Nietzsche does. Nietzsche rejects the truth of Christianity, but believe you me, there would be no Nietzsche without it. The historical phenomenon of the concept of Christianity totally shapes Nietzsche's thought. Yes, he rejects it, but he's still talking about it all the time. It's still shaping his thought. He's reacting against it. It is setting the terms for his thought. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like I would say like every debate is basically talking about like around that topic since that time.
Something like that. Something like that. That's right, Sergio. Even if it's some other debate, like does absolute truth exist? That still is connected to the notion of God and the notion of God becoming a human being. That's right. So I'm not trying to get you to become Christians. Although I hope you'll think about this stuff very deeply. But what's not optional, what you must do is appreciate the thought that in the history of ideas, let me put it to you like this. In the history of ideas, God became a man. In the world of thought, the incarnation is a thing. Okay? I mean, yeah, I'll just leave it like that. So, but that's what we mean by the emergence of Christianity. What we mean by the emergence of Christianity is this belief that was widespread and virtually, there were Jews and Muslims, especially in the medieval world. But aside from them, it was virtually universal in the West that people believed in the incarnation, that they believed what John is saying about the Logos becoming a baby. They believed it. That's what you need to appreciate in this class, because that concept was injected into how people were thinking. It became an ingredient in their thought, a presupposition for future thought that's inescapable, okay? So that's the main thing that happens between A and B. What is A? Aristotle. What is B? Descartes. We're leapfrogging over 20 centuries. And what is the main thing that we're leapfrogging over? The emergence of Christianity, AKA the incarnation of the divine Logos, okay? All right, now y'all, what do I wanna say about Christianity in super summary form as we transition to Descartes? Well, look with me at A on your outline. We've talked a little bit about, in this class about this tension, this relationship, this dialectic between two things, mythos and logos. Have we not? We've talked about that a little bit, right? Not a whole lot, but some. And you remember how, so remember how we watched that little cartoon, that little, really good animated animation story or presentation of the Greek gods, Zeus, Kronos. That it's a really good video in my opinion, very short, but very good. And that would be an example of what? Mythos, myth. When I use the word myth, I don't mean something that's false, okay? And if have I talked about this? Have I talked about this? I think I probably have. So there used to be on TV, maybe it's still on TV, some show called Mythbusters. I've never seen it, but like maybe you've seen it. What?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I accidentally muted myself. I was just commenting that I love that show.
Oh, okay. Well,
I used to watch it all the time whenever it was on.
Okay, cool. Now, I think that if you were to ask the producers of that show, what do you mean by myth? They would say, here's what I mean by myth, bullshit. So, you know, the title of the show is Mythbusters, but it might as well be Bullshit Busters. Are you with me? Their point is that these myths that are being busted, like demons, ghosts, blah, 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 this is just BS that no rational person should believe. There's some idiots out there that do believe it, but we're going to send some smart people in and show them that they're stupid. That's kind of what they mean by myth. That's not at all what I mean. And by the way, that's not at all what C.S. Lewis means in his essay that we don't have time to read or even discuss in this class called Myth Become Fact. A mythos, M-Y-T-H-O-S, that Greek word mythos, it means story. It means narrative, okay? Now, let me ask you a question. Are all narratives bullshit?
No.
No. And are some narratives bullshit? Yes, but not all.
Oh, yeah.
Not all. I mean, in fact, I would argue that narratives are inescapable. If you're someone who really loves modern science and thinks that modern science is the be all and end all, and there's so many people in our culture that think that, well, guess what? You are believing a narrative. You're believing a narrative about the progress of modern science and technology in the West. That is a narrative. That is a mythos. There's lots of different kinds of narratives / mythoi. Let me hear you say mythoi.
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 Mythoi is the plural of mythos. Lots of different narratives / mythoi / stories. That's another word, story, in our world. And some of them are bullshit. Some of them aren't, in my opinion. But stories are not bullshit by definition. I mean, I don't know. Harry Potter books are not bullshit, in my opinion. There's lots of stories that are not necessarily bullshit. Now, are some of them bullshit? Yes.
Right. It will be if like saying that a symbol is bullshit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, some symbols might be, but symbols by definition are not. I like that. That's good. Now, y'all, what I'm trying to say, look with me at A on the outline. There's this struggle between, on the one hand, mythos, think mythos, i.e. the Greek gods, Zeus, Kronos, Athena, Poseidon, etc. That's mythos. And there's a struggle, or at least a tension between that on the one hand and what? Logos. Logos can be thought of as science. We've talked a lot about science, scientia, knowledge in this class. Logos can be science, it can be scientia, it can be knowledge, it can be, you could translate that as an account. Remember how we looked at Aristotle and we said that Aristotle is a very systematic thinker? That would be an example of logos. Logos is not a story. Logos is a systematic account of reality, like a geometry textbook, okay? So what I'm trying to say right now is that there's this tension between mythos on the one and logos on the other. You might say story and science. You might say mythology and science. And there's this tension. Now, quick side note, one of the things that I try to tell my students and to teach them is that all the great thinkers take these two things and put them into dialectic. I would argue that Plato does that, which is why Plato does call bullshit on some myths. We saw that in the Euthyphro. He does do that. And yet there's other myths that he still believes in. So you see, Aristotle both believes in logos and mythos. He wants to stitch them together or marry them, okay? But there's this real struggle between mythos on the one hand, Greek gods, Zeus, and logos. By logos, you might think of Parmenides, you might think of Aristotle. Remember Parmenides, whack a being? Parmenides, who says that being is not finite. Parmenides, who says that being is simple, it doesn't change, it doesn't consist of parts and wholes. Does that sound like a story? Is Parmenides telling a story? No, he's not. He's giving a logos. A story has a plot. A story says, once upon a time, this happened, and then this happened. There's a sequence of events. That's not what Parmenides is doing. He's just defining being. That's not a story. That's a logos. It's an attempt at knowledge. All right? Now, not all myths are bullshit, but some of them are. At least this is what Plato and Aristotle and people like that would say. And so there is a time and a place to smash those myths. There is a time and a place for mythbusters to smash those myths. There is a time and a place to call bullshit on myths. In other words, there is a time and a place for this word right here, demythologization. Now that's a big ass word, demythologization. What is demythologization? Demythologization is smashing myths, busting myths for the sake of truth. Okay? What I'm trying to say is that that is a thing, and it's a good thing in the mind of Plato and Aristotle and the people we look at in this class, although it's not the full truth.
But is it like getting rid of the myth, or like getting rid of some parts of the myth?
Or maybe both.
Others.
I like it. Maybe both.
Yeah, like they keep something at least. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's part of what I'm trying to say, Sergio. Look with me at number 1. Parmenidean being has no personality and participates in no plot. In other words, Parmenidean being is not a mythos. He's not telling a story there. He's trying to be scientific. When Homer wrote the stories about Zeus and company, he wasn't trying to be scientific. That's all I'm going to say about that. So Parmenides would be one example, I would argue, at a kind of demythologization. Here's another one, Plato and the Euthyphro. Remember how he suggested that Kronos and Zeus are immoral? That's a kind of myth busting. Or number 3, Socrates' accusations in the Apology. Remember the accusations that were brought against him that he was executed for or found guilty of? Not believing in the gods of the city, the polis, right? P-O-L-I-S. That word polis could likely show up on a final exam, by the way. It means city or city-state. But Socrates was accused of not believing in the gods of the city. In other words, not believing in the mythoi. And he corrupted the youth. Basically, he was coming alongside the youth and being like, hey, don't believe the stupid stories about the gods, right? So Socrates is a demythologizer. Look at number 4. Think about Aristotle's unmoved mover. You might think that Aristotle's idea of the unmoved mover is stupid, but it's not a myth. It's not a story. The unmoved mover is not a character in a narrative. Okay? Aristotle is attempting to be scientific or systematic. He's attempting to give a kind of knowledge that he calls first philosophy. So all of those, I would argue, are examples of demythologization, or at the very least, exalting knowledge / science and downplaying or undermining mythos or mythology. Are you with me? Now, here's my real point right now as we transition from Aristotle to Descartes, okay? What's the point, Father Matt? I'll tell you what the point is. Look with me at number 2. For Christianity and, oh, by the way, Judaism and, oh, by the way, Islam. For Christianity, it is a both and. Christianity gives a high five to these demythologizers, right? Does Christianity believe in Zeus and Athena? No. In fact, look with me at footnote 6. Remember that one of the accusations against the earliest Christian martyrs, the people who got their heads chopped off by the violent Caesar Nero, the accusations against them were that they were what?
Atheists.
That's right, atheists and cannibals. But think about the atheist thing. Why? It's because they were saying, we don't believe these myths. So the Christians do give a high five to the demythologizers, but they also radically affirm mythos. Do Christians have a particular story that they believe in? Yes or no? Do Christians have a particular narrative that they believe in? Yes or no? Raise your hand if you say yes. Yeah. Can someone give me a sentence or two about the story that Christians have?
That Jesus is risen, that he rose from the dead.
Good. Jesus. Jesus is a big part of the story. He's an ingredient or a character in the story. We could also talk about things like Israel. We could talk about things like Abraham. Creation. What was that? Rachel?
Father Abraham.
Father Abraham, exactly. Moses, that's exactly right. So Christianity has a story. Christianity has a mythos. Christianity gives a high five both to the mythologizers, but also to myth. So I'm going to reread Roman numeral 2 for you. For Christianity, it's a both and. It gives a high five to the demythologizers, and yet it radically reaffirms mythos with one key difference. With one key difference. The mythos really happened. All right? Now, pause. Am I requiring you to believe that the Christian story, the narrative, is actually true? No, I'm not. Do I think it's true? Yes, I do. Did Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, C.S. Lewis think it's true? Yes, they did. The point is that the history of Western thought thinks it's true, okay? It's exactly what I was saying above. What I want you to care about is the claim being made. I want you to care about the claim being made. And the claim being made is that this story that Christians tell about Father Abraham and Adam and Eve and Moses and the nation of Israel and Jesus and the apostles and blah, 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 that story actually happened.
So they're saying...
That's the claim. And
so
it's the claim that I don't want you to dispute. If you dispute that claim, you're kind of full of shit. Now, notice I didn't say you have to believe the claim, but you have to know the claim, and you have to understand that that is what people claimed historically. Sergio.
Yeah, so it's like they said a myth was real, like saying something was. So that's funny because it's like the myth isn't real by definition, right? It's not real, but at the same time they see it as real. So there's like that union of like, I mean, to me that's just like the union of potential and actuality. Like it's not that different from that to me. You know, it's like they have like the same idea but applied to the
yeah. Sergio, I'm not sure I would agree that a myth by definition is not real.
Oh,
although
okay.
I certainly see where you're going with that, and I think that that's a good thought. Certainly most people assume that myths are not real, and they have for a long time. But maybe I might want to suggest that myths sort of,
what if myths have
leave that open? It's hard to know if a myth is literally true or not. It's hard to know if a myth is supposed to be taken as literally true or not. Rachel, did you say something?
Yeah, with a myth though, can't there also be parts of it that are true and parts of it that are not true?
Well,
you know, like
yes,
a fable.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you pay close attention to what
gray area in between there too.
Absolutely. And that's one of the points about Socrates. I mean, remember in the Euthyphro, he smashes myths, but then if you keep reading, he talks about other myths that he seems to believe in. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he doesn't reject the whole thing. He just rejects some of it. Good. Oh, I wanted to show you a quick video.
So if you were talking about if God becomes man, does that imply parts and whole? Does that say that pure form can then become closer to prime matter?
Absolutely, Jagger. I mean, your use of the phrase parts and wholes threw me a little bit, although I think I know what you're doing there.
I just related it to being.
No, it's good. It's good. With respect to what you said about form and matter, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that one way to think about the Christian claim that the word became flesh, the logos became flesh, is you could say the form became matter. Absolutely.
Yeah. I just wanted to make that connection.
And I think that let me say two things about that. One, I think that that's exactly why John uses those terms. That's what he's saying. But secondly, this shows that the Bible is influenced by Jewish thought. All right. So Christianity has two big ingredients: Hebrew thought, AKA the Old Testament. I'm simplifying, but Hebrew thought, Jewish thought, AKA the Old Testament, and Greek thought, AKA Plato, Aristotle, and company. They're the ones who give us this language of form and matter. And I think that, yes, Jagger, what John's gospel is channeling is categories of Greek philosophy. Yes. Y'all, I want to do one more thing. Actually, let me just read Roman numeral 3. I'm just going to read it, and then we're going to close with a short clip by a guy named Jordan Peterson that I saw like 48 hours ago. And it's kind of crazy. He's talking about logos and mythos, and I'm going to show you that. But let me just read Roman numeral 3 real quick. So thinkers like Boethius, he's a Christian, Augustine, Aquinas, and Bonaventure, and C.S. Lewis, I forgot C.S. Lewis, they all affirm both mythos and logos. Okay? There's some people in the history of Western thought that are 100% mythos and 0% logos. Others who are 100% logos and 0% mythos. But Christianity's both. Okay? Now, I want to watch a video about by this guy named Jordan Peterson. I'm not a card-carrying Jordan Peterson fan. I don't know if you know who Jordan Peterson is. It doesn't really matter. But one of the takeaways from this video, by the way, Jordan Peterson has like 50 million YouTube followers. He's a very big deal. And one of the reasons why I think it's good to watch this video is because it shows you how relevant philosophy is. It shows you how relevant this class is. This is the most relevant class you'll ever take in your university studies. I would argue. And this is a good example of that. It's a 3-minute video by Jordan Peterson. What I want you to do is to listen for what he says or things that he says that sound like mythos/story/narrative and that sound like logos or scientific thinking or maybe objective thinking, okay? Listen to those two things and listen to what Jordan Peterson says about them. I think that this is from like 2 days ago or something like that.
Made that claim in comparative religion. Joseph Campbell did that, and Jung to a lesser degree, I would say, but Campbell did that. But the difference, and C.S. Lewis pointed this out as well, the difference between those mythological gods and Christ was that there's a representation of, there's a historical representation of his existence as well. Now you can debate whether or not that's genuine. You can debate about whether or not he actually lived and whether there's credible objective evidence for that, but it doesn't matter in some sense because this, well, it does, but there's a sense in which it doesn't matter because there's still a historical story. And so what you have in the figure of Christ is an actual person who actually lived plus a myth. And in some sense, Christ is the union of those two things. And the problem is I probably believe that, but I don't know. I'm amazed at my own belief and I don't understand it. Like, because I've seen sometimes the objective world
It's not, we're not listening right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we can't hear anything.
Yeah, he said like the objective world and then we stopped listening.
Yeah, let's just watch the video real quick and we can discuss it later, okay? Thank you.
We can't hear it.
Since I believe it's undeniable.
Oh, I muted it. I'm so sorry. I'm so dumb. Okay, sorry.
The objective world.
Is that a good place to start it?
Yeah.
Forgive me, I'm a dork sometimes, but you already knew that, so it's cool.
In the narrative world, touch. You know, like, because I've seen.
Okay, I'm gonna rewind, sorry.
I'm amazed at my own belief in things. The problem is I probably believe that, but an actual person who actually lived plus a myth. And in some sense, Christ is the union of those two things. The problem is I probably believe that, but I don't know. I'm amazed at my own belief and I don't understand it. Like, because I've seen sometimes the objective world and the narrative world touch. You know, that's Jungian synchronicity. And I've seen that many times in my own life. And so in some sense, I believe it's undeniable. You know, we have a narrative sense of the world. For me, that's been the world of morality. That's the world that tells us how to act. It's real, like we treat it like it's real. It's not the objective world, but the narrative and the objective world touch. And the ultimate example of that in principle is supposed to be Christ. But I don't know what to, that seems to me oddly plausible.
Yeah.
But I still don't know what to make of it. It's too, partly because it's too terrifying a reality to fully believe. I don't even know what would happen to you if you fully believed it.
If you believed in the story of Christ, or if you believed that history and let's say the narrative meet, let's
both, say. I think you, because when you believe that, you buy both those stories. You believe that the narrative and the objective can actually touch.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Y'all.
This is the checkers game where grandson and granddad will bond.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
All right, cool. I think what I want to do now is resist the temptation to discuss this video, which is super interesting and super provocative, because I think we're out of time. And but we will discuss it. Let me ask you this though. I hope you see that in that video he's talking about the objective world on the one hand, and he's talking about the narrative world on the other. And I hope you see how that's what we're talking about. We're talking about science, knowledge, system. You might think of that as scientific thinking. You might think of it as sort of maybe your geometry textbook, or maybe putting stuff in a test tube like scientific researchers do, empirical observation, blah, 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 the scientific method. Yes, that's what Jordan Peterson means by the objective world. But then there's this other thing that he's calling the narrative world. And he's saying that the thing that he weirdly, he's not a Christian, by the way, and he's brilliant. But the thing that he's saying that he almost kind of sort of finds himself believing is the claim that the Word became flesh. In other words, the claim that in Christ, Jesus, that word Christ is just the Greek word Christos, which means Mashiach, Messiah. The word Christ is the Greek word for Messiah. It's not Jesus's last name, right? Jesus H. Christ. No. Jesus Christ means Jesus Messiah. And so what Jordan Peterson is saying is that the weird thing that he finds himself almost unable to resist is that these two things, the objective and the narrative, that they actually do become one in Christ. All right? But to close, I just want to say, we've said goodbye to Aristotle, and now we're saying hello to Descartes. We're leapfrogging over 2,000 centuries or 20 centuries of thought. If you held a gun to my head and said, what is the biggest thing that happens in those 20 centuries? I would clearly say the emergence of Christianity. What do I mean by the emergence of Christianity? Well, who cares what I mean? How about let's talk about what Augustine, Aquinas, and C.S. Lewis mean. And what they mean is the incarnation of the divine Logos. I don't really care if you literally believe that right now. You do need to understand that that is the claim, and that the claim is that it happened in history. It's not just a fairy tale. It's not like a Harry Potter story written by J.K. Rowling. The claim is that it happened historically. And so this mythos that Christians combine with Logos is historical. Okay? That's the main thing that's happened in the interim between Aristotle on the one hand and Descartes on the other. And y'all, I think that's it. Now, I want to ask you one question in terms of housekeeping. Did I say at the beginning of this class that I was thinking about having or not thinking about, but that I'm going to have an end of the semester party at my house? Did I say that at the beginning of this class? Okay,
yes.
Then I'm not going to repeat it now. Okay, y'all, that's all I got. Any thoughts, questions, jokes? I'm happy that my MacBook. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, and this is about the video.
Good.
Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely. And you can
okay.
rewatch it, on your own time, but yeah.
Yeah, I definitely need to do that. But so, and I tried to write it out in question form real quick. So is Jordan Peterson saying that he feels like if he believes that the objective world and the narrative world meet, that could also possibly be related to James 4, where he calls people that believe the worldview and, drift more towards that way versus God's worldview, which would be considered the objective point of view, the worldview being the narrative view. Can those two things kind of be related in that sense?
So you lost me a little bit.
And the question would be, could, if we believe that, would we be calling ourselves adulterers? Like, is that what Jordan Peterson basically believes? the same thing that's basically written in James 4?
So I think the answer is no. I think that you lost me a little bit with the James 4 thing, but let me just say, it sounds like you are equating the objective truth with the right view and the narrative view with the false view. Yeah.
Right. The objective view would be, God's worldview, like the truth, etc.
All right, Rachel.
And then the worldview would be the point of view, like believing that.
Listen,
so if you believe that, it makes you an adulterer.
So I think
that's what it says in James 4.
Okay.
It's just strong language that I think to describe, you can't believe the narrative and believe the truth.
Yeah.
Is what he's saying.
Oh, very good. So let me say a couple things. First off, I hope that you will re-watch this video.
Yes,
I think that if you were, and I don't mean the Jordan Peterson video, I mean my class. Because
this one I missed the last one, and because like all the craziness in the sermon, I still have not watched that one, so I need to go back and watch that one, and I'm going to go back and rewatch this one because I missed 20 minutes of it.
No, all good. So let me just say, I don't think that Jordan Peterson is saying what you're saying, because he's not saying that the narrative is bad. That's what's so crazy. That's actually my point, is Jordan Peterson.
Right, and I was just thinking of it like I said, just more on like I guess an extremist point of view with it.
Yeah,
like
so
not exactly like just in relation to the two.
And listen, this might be a great paper topic. This is also something like that I would love to discuss further in virtual office hours, or maybe after class or something like that. Cool. But let me just say that, so C.S. Lewis, Thomas Aquinas, and St. Augustine, they all love James 4. None of them would disagree with James 4.
Especially C.S. Lewis.
Yeah. However, I think that they would say is that, yes, there are false narratives. Yeah, of course there are. James is talking about a false narrative. That's the worldly thing that Christians shouldn't believe. But what I'm talking about, and what Jordan Peterson is talking about, is the Jesus narrative, the Christ narrative. What Augustine, Aquinas, and C.S. Lewis would call the true narrative. In fact, what C.S. Lewis calls the myth become fact. That's the thing that Jordan Peterson is saying, wow, in Christ, that story, the narrative, becomes one with objective reality. Anyway, I'm going to hit pause, Rachel. We can talk more about it in the future. And I'm so glad that you asked the question. Y'all, I've got 508, and it's great to see your faces today. And if anyone has any thoughts about meeting in person next week, I talked about that at the beginning, right? Text me. I'm leaning forward. I'm leaning toward doing that beginning next week, but don't worry. I will make it crystal clear on Wednesday, okay? But if you have any thoughts about that, feel free to email me or text me if you haven't already. And that's it for me. I'll see y'all on Wednesday. Keep reading Descartes. If you do nothing else, actually read the synopsis of the 6 meditations, okay? And it's good to be with y'all today. May the force be with you.
And also with you.
Also with you.
Peace out.